Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Novak, and I'm a program manager for the Alzheimer's Association. Today, we are pleased to present this program on the important topic of the warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia and how those things are different from normal age-related cognitive changes. This program is part of the library for the Prince Hall Mason Grand Masonic Lodge members as a piece of our partnership between Prince Hall and the Alzheimer's Association. Thanks for watching this recording today. And you will also be able to utilize the chat, not by participating in it, but you will be able to see the links and resources that I will be putting in the chat towards the end of the presentation. So for the content of today's program, I would like to introduce Juanita Wade, who you see in the corner of your screen. Juanita is one of our Alzheimer's Association community educators, and she will be giving the content of this presentation. So without further ado, Juanita, I'll let you introduce yourself and get started. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Elizabeth. As Elizabeth said, my name is Juanita Wade. I have been a health educator, community educator with Alzheimer's for almost 5 years. I've come to Alzheimer's through personal experience. My mom passed from Alzheimer's some years ago. I'm excited to be here as your presenter. So let's get on with the program. The 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. Today, what we're going to try to be able to learn together is describe the typical age-related memory, thinking, and behavioral changes, recognize common warning signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, discuss the tips for approaching someone about memory concerns, explain the importance of early detection and the benefits of diagnosis, identify possible tests and assessments for the diagnostic process, and to name the resources available through the Alzheimer's Association. When we get to those, the resources, you'll be able to, again, go to the chat and be able to see them listed. Let's meet the Garcias. Mary, a 73-year-old widow, she lives alone. She's a retired teacher who has always meticulously cared for her home. Her daughter, Lydia, has recently been noticing laundry pile up and junk mail and old newspapers lying around the house. Lydia is chatting with her sister. I'm worried about Mom. She keeps losing things and the house is a mess. Probably normal to get a little forgetful with age. I don't know, it's so unlike her. Should we worry? Well, let's reach out to our old neighbor, Dr. Salloway, and see what he has to say.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody, and it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things, but not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
So let's look at the 10 warning signs. I think Dr. Salloway gave some really good points for us to get started. And if you're over 65, as I am, you notice that you forget to some things, and things just aren't the same as they used to be, but it's quite different if you are have Alzheimer's or dementia. So let's move forward. These are the areas we're going to cover. Let's talk about what is dementia.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein, and frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
Okay, let's talk about what is Alzheimer's. As she noted, it's the most prevalent form of dementia.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alice Alzheimer's described specific changes in the brain, what we call the formation of plaques and tangles. Now, Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and is thought to impact memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. The cerebrum fills up most of your skull. It is part of the brain most involved in remembering, problem solving, thinking, and even feelings. There are about 100 billion nerve cells or neurons throughout the brain that transmit messages in order for us to create memories, feelings, and thoughts. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to the brain tissue loss, or what we call shrinkage, and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as memory loss, problems with thinking, planning, behavioral issues, and even at the end stages, problems with swallowing.
Now let's talk about why is it important that we know these signs? How do we detect it when we see it? How do we define it, describe
It's
it?
important to know what the warning signs of Alzheimer's are and to be on the lookout. We know that we change over time, and the warning signs of Alzheimer's can be warning signs of a number of things, but when you see those in yourself or in someone you care about, it's important to check it out, to consult with a doctor, to find out what you're dealing with.
Well, now we're going to talk about those signs. Very important to know them. The 10 warning signs. We're going to go through each one and talk about what it looks like and how you detect it. Okay, let's talk about memory loss. And we're talking about the kind of memory loss that disrupts daily life, not the memory loss where you lost your keys and you follow yourself through the house until you find them, but someone who really, kind of memory loss that impacts life. The most common signs of Alzheimer's is forgetting, leaving information. Oh, I'm sorry. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's is forgetting recently learned information. Other forms include forgetting important dates or events, asking the same question over and over because you don't know that you've asked it already, or increasingly relying on memory aids, having the need use notes, leaving stuff on the mirror so you remember things, or asking family members to manage tasks for you that you were able to manage pretty easy on your own. Now, what's typical of age-related change? Well, it's sometimes forgetting names or appointments, but remembering them later. Let's look at number 2, challenges in planning or solving problems. Now, what are possible signs of dementia? Some people may experience changes in their ability to develop or follow a plan or work with numbers, which may result in trouble following a familiar recipe. Like if you, like your grandmother used to be able to put the flour, sugar, and everything in a bowl, whip it right up, and she had a pound cake. Well, if people have trouble with some of those familiar things they did all the time, or keeping track of your monthly bills, when you start seeing late notices coming in from in the house for your loved one, you got to pay attention. Difficulty concentrating and taking much longer time to complete tasks that they used to be able to whip up like that. Now, what's an age-related change? Making occasional errors when managing your finances or household bills. Again, the difference is when they impact your life and you really can't do the activities or remember things anymore. But age-related is really when it happens every now and then, the occasional error. What was a sign for John?
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of I would lose my thought, I'd lose my focus, I'd get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was I was trying to remember, which was I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was really a vicious circle so I was able to control it a lot, so that people wouldn't see things, and there weren't things to be seen. It's what was disturbing me was what effort I had to put into to do the things I used to do more easily.
I want you to note what John said about he would cover it up so that others wouldn't see it. So stop and think. There are many folks who are in early stages of dementia, but don't want folks to know that forgetting things or unable to complete tasks, so they cover it up. Let's go to the next sign. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. What are the possible signs of dementia in this area? Well, people living with dementia commonly have difficulty completing tasks. Driving to a familiar location, they get in the car and say, I'm going to go to this particular store. And they jump in the car and they start going. And before they notice, they're in a part of town they don't know, and they don't know how they got there. Also, organizing a grocery list. Now, that's something that many of us do all the time, but they're unable to do it. And remembering the rules of a favorite game. Oh, whether it's Monopoly or some game they're playing cards, all of a sudden they have a hard time remembering how to play the game. Now, what's a typical age-related change? Well, occasionally needing help to use the settings on a microwave or a recorder or DVD or whatever, or trying to get a television show. I'm telling you, that happens to me. So we know that's age-related, but it's quite different from those who are showing signs of dementia. Let's hear what an expert has to say.
Some people have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
We all have to be ambassadors and watch for the signs. Let's look at number 4, confusion with time or place. Now, what does that look like with someone who may have dementia? Well, they start having trouble understanding something if it's not happening immediately. Like, if something's going to happen later in the day, they may not remember that it's going to happen or understand it. They may even forget where they are or how they got there. Like I mentioned, someone driving. This could happen if you're in a store and you've gone down a particular aisle to find an item that you want. All of a sudden, you're in that aisle and have no idea what you went down there for or even how you got there. Now, how does it relate to what does it look like for a typical related change? Getting confused about the day of the week, but figuring it out. I keep calendars all over my house for that reason. But again, it's quite different from having a constant inability to understand something that's going on or where you are, how you got there. Let's look at number 5. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. This is a really important one. Oftentimes, with possible signs of dementia would be difficulty with balance. Someone may look like they may have vertigo and be able, maybe falling frequently. They may have trouble reading, again, following words across a page with difficulty. They may have trouble judging distance and determining color contrast, which may cause issues when someone is driving. Very, very important. They may not be able to drive and understand when they turn the corner if they've given themselves enough distance from the sidewalk. These are the possible signs of dementia. Age-related, vision changes related to cataracts. And I'm sure folks who are over 65 who get regular doctor appointments with your eye doctor understand that. Let's hear what an expert has to say about this one.
Alzheimer's disease is not just a disease of memory. It can affect other things too. It can affect the way that we perceive what we see. So sometimes somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's might go to the eye doctor because they're having trouble seeing, and in fact their vision is just fine, but the way they're perceiving what they're seeing may be difficult.
Oftentimes, sometimes folks even have signs of seeing things, delusions about what's in the room, what's not happening. Very typical signs of dementia. Let's move to the next one. New problems with words in speaking or writing. Here are the possible signs of dementia. Someone may stop in the middle of a conversation and not know where they are in the conversation or how to continue. They're speaking with their loved ones or someone, and they forget the word, or they're repeating themselves over and over again. Struggling with vocabulary. They want to talk about a glass across the table, but can't find the right word for glass. Or having trouble naming a familiar object or using the wrong name for that object, like seeing a pencil on the table, but calling it a stick. Now, what's a typical age-related change? Sometimes having trouble finding the right word. Happens for folks over 65. Let's see what trouble Phil started to have.
The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
So you can see even in that brief comment, he was having trouble just pulling the words out. Let's talk about sign number 7. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. Again, the possible signs of dementia. People may lose things and be unable to go back over their steps to find them. They may even accuse others of stealing, which may occur more frequently over time. Again, I mentioned this in the beginning. If you, the normal person, a person who is going through age-related changes, may misplace stuff. You come in the house from your garage, you throw the keys down on a table and you go and put your groceries away. Well, you say, oh, I left something in the car. Well, you've got to retrace your steps. There you find the keys on the credenza in that hallway and you can go back to the garage. But folks who are going through dementia may not be able to retrace their steps. They're not sure where they came from or where they left those keys. Another is accusing people, becoming very paranoid and accusatory when they can't find something in particular. Let's hear from an expert on this one.
So some people wonder if they lose their keys or their glasses or their purse, is that a sign of Alzheimer's? And one thing that I would say about that is, for most of us, we might misplace something, but then if we retrace our steps, we can usually find it. We can usually remember. For a person with Alzheimer's, sometimes they're not able to retrace their steps. Sometimes that memory is just gone. And so when they do find their keys next to the phone because they got interrupted by a phone call when they were coming in, they set their keys down in an unusual space, so there they are next to the phone. If that happened to you or me, we'd probably remember, oh yeah, the phone was ringing when I came in the door. I put down my keys. The person with Alzheimer's might not remember. They might wonder who's moving their keys around because they never put their keys by the phone. So that's just a little bit of a difference in some of the dynamics with losing things in Alzheimer's.
Let's go on to sign number 8. Decreased or poor judgment. What are the possible signs of someone with dementia in this area? Well, using poor judgment when dealing with money, overpaying or underpaying, or purchasing items they would not have purchased normally, but got a phone call and passed out their credit card to someone who happened to call. They may pay less attention to their grooming or keeping themselves clean. You know that you would see Miss Smith in church every Sunday, and she would dress impeccably, hat in the right place. But all of a sudden now, you're seeing her on Sunday disheveled, not clean, not even dressed in proper clothing to leave the house. So what's a typical age-related change? Well, making a bad decision or a mistake once in a while, not like neglecting to change the oil in your car, or something you do on a regular basis, you forget to do it. That's normal aging. Let's see how Teresa handled things.
The way I kept my house, I wouldn't say I was OCD, but pretty close to it. And all of a sudden, everything was okay with me. It's like, oh, it's a pile, I'm tired. So my dining room table usually looked like it was someone's office, because I always would say I would do it tomorrow. And then my bedroom, as far as clothing, I would just put it in a corner, put it in a chair. And all of this is just, I wouldn't say it looked like I was a pet wreck, but really I was, because I never threw anything away. I always would say, I'll get to it, but I never did get to it. So just the way of my standard of living, it was actually decreasing.
Let's talk about sign number 9. Withdrawal from work or social activities. What are the possible signs of dementia? Well, you may find your loved ones withdrawing from hobbies, social activities, or other engagements. They're uncomfortable, so they don't want to be around other folks who would notice if they can't understand how to play a game anymore, or if they were in a book club, they were unable to read the books or keep up. Having trouble keeping up with a favorite team or activity. Your sports team is coming on, it's football season, but you're not sure which team you even support, or an activity that you've been engaged in for a long time. Now, what's a typical age-related change? Well, sometimes just feeling uninterested in family or social engagements. Everybody goes through that. Let's hear what an expert has to say.
One of the most common changes, and early on, is the person's comfort zone shrinks a little bit, and then that gets worse throughout the course of the illness. So they're less comfortable going out, they're less motivated to do things than they were in the past. So there's some change in day-to-day functioning that way. I think people also lose confidence in their cognitive abilities, because they may not recognize someone or know their name or find the right word, and they'll feel awkward, and they don't want people to notice that, so they feel more comfortable at home or in situations with family where they're very, very comfortable with that wouldn't concern them. So people tend to withdraw a little bit and be less outgoing. That's can be one of the early signs of Alzheimer's.
Okay, so let's go to number 10. Changes in mood and personality. What are possible signs? Well, becoming confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. And when we talk about these changes, we're not talking about every now and then. These changes become a part of the person's regular personality. Also, getting upset easily at home or with friends, or when out of their comfort zone. Again, Dr. Salloway talked about folks get comfortable at home, because if they're not confident about their cognitive abilities, they don't want folks to notice that or see that. So they stay home. And once they're outside of that setting and they're around other people, they may be very uncomfortable about what folks can see. What's a typical age-related change? Well, developing very specific ways of doing things and becoming irritable when your routine is disrupted. Let's hear what an expert has to say.
Another early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia is subtle changes in behavior. So all of a sudden, the family may notice the person is more easily irritated, or more impatient, or a little moody, or have a shorter fuse, or more anxious. Now, there's lots of things that can cause that, but often that can be an early symptom of Alzheimer's or go along with the early symptoms of memory loss.
Okay. The 10 warning signs. Remember, memory loss, challenges in planning and solving problems, difficulty completing familiar tasks, confusion with time or place, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, new problems with words and speaking or writing, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps, decreased or poor judgment, withdrawal from work or social activities, and changes in mood and personality. We all have to be ambassadors. We have to be ambassadors around those we care for and love. So if we see these signs, or if we see it in ourselves, we need to make sure we get medical attention. So let's talk about when we see it and what should we do next? What are the next steps when you notice these changes? We've got the sisters talking to each other. Did you look at the warning signs info I sent you? I did, but I still don't know. Mom's showing a couple of signs, but not all the time. How do we know if it's serious enough to see a doctor? Well, let's check with Dr. Soloway again.
Memory is not all or none, especially when there are early symptoms or signs. So on a good day, people might function very well and not really even, no one notices there's a memory problem. But on other days, especially if they're tired, then things become more noticeable. So memory is variable. It's not all or none. And then there are different type of symptoms that develop for each person. So some people may have trouble with language, may have trouble with organizing themselves, may have trouble navigating while driving, and other people don't have the same symptoms. So you don't have to have every symptom of Alzheimer's to be concerned. And I think the most important thing is determining what has changed from that person's normal level of functioning. And usually people have a pretty keen sense of, what they can normally do well. And then when either they or the family notice that there has been some change from that usual pattern of functioning, that should be a warning sign to people. But they don't have to check off all the boxes.
So the 10 warning signs recap. These 10 warning signs are just a guide to identify problems that may be related to Alzheimer's. Again, these signs, if you see one or two in someone you love, it may not be Alzheimer's. The most important thing is to get someone to a doctor. Individuals may experience one or multiple warning signs in varying degrees, but they don't have to experience them all for there to be concern. And if you notice any of these signs in yourself or someone else, it's important to see a doctor. Let's not start doing our own diagnosis on what we see. The most important thing is if you see these behaviors, these changes in your loved ones or someone you cares for behavior, let's set up an appointment. The importance of early detection is what we want to talk about next. First, let's hear from an expert, because family and friends are often the first people to notice those changes. You stop in and visit mom on a weekly basis. You stop in and see a friend. Someone comes and visits you. Let's hear what experts have to say.
It's a very interesting phenomena that people who have memory problems are often less aware of it than family members or their friends who know them well. One of the reasons for that is our ability to monitor ourselves, which is an important part of brain function, decreases when we start having memory problems. Not in everybody, but commonly, and more than half the people with memory problems. And so the person is just not keeping track of the trouble they're having day to day. But the family members are, paying attention. If they're paying attention, they see, boy, this is starting to happen a lot, and the person's not aware of it. So the family's more aware, and they may talk to their loved one about it, and they say, I've noticed you've been repeating yourself. And they say, I'm not repeating myself. And that could either be due to the fact that they're not aware of it, or they may not want to acknowledge it.
Right. Let's see what Mary noticed.
I was so adamant about what was happening to Daryl. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. And this wasn't the person that I know. This wasn't the person. Daryl was my husband was very, he always had to be building or designing or working with his hands. And it was getting to the point where he wasn't, and he was becoming very frustrated when he was forgetting to do things or go places.
So Mary was noticing things with her husband. Let's talk about what to do next. We're noticing. How do we handle this? What should you do if you notice the changes in someone? There are 10 steps we want to walk through. You want to first assess the situation. What changes in memory, thinking, or behavior do you see? And I tell people, if you start to see things in your loved one, someone you care for, start to write them down. Because the first thing you want to do is, one, note that behavior and note the frequency of the behavior. Because if it happens every now and then, might not be anything critical. But if it's happening more frequently, you want to pay attention. 2, what else is going on in someone's life? Has new person moved in with them, and so there's a little stress? Are they unwell? Are they having an illness, something that's affecting their body, some medication, new medication they're taking? You want to pay attention to that, because that may in fact be affecting their behavior. You want to learn about the signs and the benefits of early diagnosis, because it really does matter if you are able to see a doctor early as opposed to someone is far along in their journey before they get help. Has anyone else noticed the changes? I tell folks, if you start to notice stuff, write it down. And then you may want to talk to other family members. Have you noticed mom asking the same questions over and over again? Have you noticed that the house that used to be spotless clean is now a little messy and she doesn't seem to notice that? Or have you noticed that Bob's not changing his clothes on a regular basis and keeping himself really dressed really well the way he used to? You gotta talk with the folks around the person to see who else notices. Have a conversation. Not easy, but you want to have the conversation, and you want to engage with the person who you think is most affected by these changes. Very important. Who should have the conversation to discuss these concerns? Well, you have to have the person who is affected in the conversation. This is not something you take with folks on the side and whisper. You want to engage the loved one in the conversation about what you see, about what they may see, and about how you are there to support them and care for them. What's the best time and place to have the conversation? Anytime, any place. But the bottom line is you want it to be comfortable for the person who is affected. You want it to be a time when they are relaxed, they're not stressed. You may want to make sure they're home in the comfort of their environment. You want to make sure it's not in the later part of the afternoons when sundowners may affect their thinking or behavior. You want to make sure there aren't a whole lot of people around, so you want to keep the conversation with maybe 1 or 2 people, because you want this to be a good time and a good place for the person who may have the disease. What will you or the person having the conversation say? Well, just talk about what you've observed. Talk about what you've been able to write down. Talk about what you saw happening on a frequent basis that has you concerned. If you see the house is not cared for, if you see the person's demeanor and clothing is not cared for, you want to talk about that. You don't want to pressure, you don't want to scare, you don't want it to be angry, you want it to be supportive. Offer to go to the doctor with the person. One, you may have had all these notes you've written down. It's not likely that the person's written down notes. They may remember some of the things that are bothering them, but if you've got a list of things that you've observed and some dates to show the frequency, you can provide a lot of information to the doctor. If needed, have multiple conversations. If people say, no, I haven't noticed those things, I think you're wrong, I'm really okay. Well, don't give up. At another time, in a good place, in a good time, start the conversation again. It's not going to happen once. You're going to have multiple conversations so that the person understands that you care and that you're concerned. and reach out for support. Reach out for support among family members, in your church, in your social clubs, those people who love and respect your loved one. You reach out to the Alzheimer's Association and to medical professionals. Definitely turn to the Alzheimer's Association for information and support. There's lots to learn from Alzheimer's Association at the website or call them. But you got to see a doctor. We do not encourage people, again, to do these self-diagnoses or diagnosis on your loved one. See a doctor, see medical help. Most people address concerns about memory, thinking, or behavior with their primary care physician. However, in some cases, the primary care physician will refer the person to a specialist for further evaluation. Those specialists may include a geriatrician, a neurologist, a neuropsychologist, a psychiatrist, and/or a psychologist. This body of specialists can bring lots of information to the person with the disease and to the family. But you must see a doctor to get the correct diagnosis. It's not going to the next slide. I'm sorry. There it goes. What are the benefits of early detection?
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Also, the treatments that are available for Alzheimer's don't cure Alzheimer's. They don't slow down the disease, but they do help with symptoms. And it seems as though they tend to work better the earlier a person is able to use those. So that can help too. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue.
Going to the doctor and seeking a diagnosis. Well, let's test your knowledge, all right? Let's see what you know so far. There is currently no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. I would say 25 years ago, this was probably true, but today it is false. There are a number of assessments and tests that make it possible for healthcare professionals to diagnose Alzheimer's with a high degree of certainty. Possible assessments and tests. This is Mary Garcia. The daughters were talking about how they noticed changes in her behavior. So they may look at her medical history and do a physical exam. They also may do some laboratory tests and mental cognitive status tests. These two tests will help give the doctor some ammunition for having this conversation about Mary's diagnosis. Do dementia-like symptoms always result in a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or another dementia? Appointments have been going well. Mom's handling them okay. Think it's really dementia? Well, I guess we won't know until we get the diagnosis, but let's ask Dr. Salloway if it could possibly be anything else.
Someone could have high blood pressure that's out of control, or they might have a thyroid condition that's not regulated, or diabetes that's not right, or on a medication that actually can cause memory loss. Drinking too much alcohol can make memory worse. So there are a lot of factors that go into cognitive difficulty with aging that some of them can be remedied. And so we want to do everything we can to improve cognitive ability and quality of life.
So again, no self-diagnosis, get medical attention. The diagnostic experience may vary from person to person. Everyone's journey with dementia, Alzheimer's is different. Everyone's journey is different. Something other than Alzheimer's or another dementia could be causing the symptoms. Stigma and misconceptions about the disease, like believing that nothing can be done, may in fact prevent some folks from seeking the kind of diagnosis they need, and as soon as they need it. What's next when the diagnosis is Alzheimer's? I called, but I got your voicemail. How'd it go? I'll call you later when I get home, but the diagnosis is early stage Alzheimer's. Oh no, what do we do now? Doc says the Alzheimer's Association offers free resources. Some even help people live well with the disease. We'll call you soon, but left office with some hope. The Alzheimer's Association. I'm now going to put this conversation back to Elizabeth, where she can talk about what the Alzheimer's Association has to offer.
Sorry, unmute myself. Thank you, Juanita, for all of that great content. What I'm going to do now is put a bunch of stuff in the chat at one time, and then I'm going to go over it individually. All right, so the first thing I have in the chat is that for more information about anything that we discussed today, there's several things that you can do. You can visit alz.org, very simple web address to remember. You can also call our 24/7 helpline number, which is on Juanita's screen right now, and it's also in the chat. And that number is 800-272-3900. There you can be connected to someone who can answer simple questions, but you can also be connected to a care consultant who will be able to dive deeper into a conversation about a specific situation that you or someone you know might be going through. Another thing that we have at the Alzheimer's Association is our community resource finder. I've also put that in the chat. That offers easy access to resources, community programs, and services. You would put your zip code in that community resource finder and then choose what you're looking for. It could be that you're looking for a neurologist or a home health care agency. Put in your zip code. The community resource finder will show you a list of resources that match the criteria you have put in. In addition, we have support groups. So support groups are for caregivers of individuals living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And I've put that link there so you can find online where you can sign up for those support groups that are coming up. We have more education programs like this one. That link is in there too. tinyurl/virtual offerings WNC. There you'll be able to find our live presentations where you can have interaction, and there's some other topics in addition to this 10 warning signs program. ALZ Connected is also a great resource where individuals can kind of communicate, kind of like a blog with comments. So you can talk to other individuals who are going through the same thing that you might be going through. In addition, you'll be able to find the Alzheimer's Navigator on that website as well. And that will help you create a plan if you or someone you know is going through this process. And then finally, We want you to be able to learn more about other volunteer opportunities through the link on the chat. And then if you would like to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association or join the fight through things like our Walk to End Alzheimer's, the Longest Day, our advocacy efforts, or our programming and support efforts, you can find more information at act.alz.org. That link is also found in the chat. And then if you are unsure where to go because we gave so many resources, I would recommend that one of your first stops be either the 800 number, so 800-272-3900, or alz.org, and I'm sure you can find what you're looking for. Thanks everyone for listening to our recording today. We hope that you learned something, and I hope you have a great day.